Welcome to the Reading Roundup, where I'm going to cover the 10 books and one DNF, just like last month, that I read in the month of June. First things first, if you hear knockoff Disney music, no, you don't. You definitely can't hear my son on his Tony. It's quiet time right now, and I'm going to make the most of it. First book of this month is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. It was a deeply sad look at a pretty young doctor who's just about to finish his training to be a neurosurgeon and finds out he has stage 4 lung cancer. And this is kind of the ups and downs of getting better, getting worse, getting better, getting worse, and then finally coming to terms with not only his own mortality, but also that he will not be a part of his daughter's life, his wife's life, all of that. It's very short. I think it was only about like a 204 page kind of thing. It was really short. And I was so upset by the end of it. My husband at one point came in and was just like, he died. It's like, yeah, we know. It's like, I know that, but my copy got very blurry at around 185 pages, but it was a 5 out of 5 for me. Next up is Hollow Kingdom by Kira Jane Buxton, which follows a crow named Shitturd, ST for short, through the zombie apocalypse, and he basically tries to save the humans, which he calls mofos, and tries to gather up as many of the domestics, so the dogs, cats, rats, things like that, and save them from the inevitability of their own demise, because they don't have humans to let them out of their homes, to take care of them, and he becomes a very important part of his community. It had really interesting, very unique zombies. I thought that was cool. Like, the aesthetics of it was really interesting. It was very vulgar in a pretty childish way. There's a lot of swearing. There's a lot of just silly little asides. But I had a great time with this. It tickled me endlessly. The narrator sounds a lot like Nathan Fillion. So in my head, I would love if they made this a show. If it were to be anyone, I think it should be Nathan Fillion. I think he would carry it very well. I really enjoyed it. It was surprisingly poignant sometimes, like the love he has for the mofos and the sort of heights that humanity can hit in his eyes, and how it's like, hey, we really should be hitting those heights more often. So 5 out of 5. Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I have read this before. This is my second time reading it. I read it on my own in 2024, and then I read it again for book club. Apparently I'm the only one that likes this in my book club. But it follows two men who are basically trying to rescue the moon goddess from her imprisonment. And it is a dense, chunky little book. It is thick. But I really enjoyed the audiobook. I think it's fantastic. I think it works a lot better as an audiobook than a physical book. The physical book's kind of screwy from what I've seen. But it's so good. Very unique. It's a single book, which is kind of rare now with fantasy books. Everything has to be dragged out into a series. It covers a lot of really interesting topics. It has some really cool lore through it. It's pretty graphic in the violence perspective for a while, at least, and then it kind of tapers off over time. It's got it's fun. I had a great time. It's told in first, second, and third person, kind of interchangeably. It's also told as a stage play, which I think is really cool. It's a beautiful book, and I had a great time the second time around, so 5 out of 5. Next up was Burn Down Master's House by Clay Kane. This one was just okay. It follows, I think, 5 enslaved people, so 2 men, and then several other people. I think there's 2 women. I didn't really commit it to memory. But what basically happens in each of these stories, it's little vignettes. It's not very long, but it also just isn't very good. In each of these vignettes, it builds up these cartoonishly evil people, which slave owners were evil. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They were evil people. But these people are so evil that it comes off almost like, okay, they're just so absurd. There's no nuance to it. There's no depth to it. And so it's like, well, yeah, of course they're evil. Of course bad things should happen to them. So there's no build-up to it. For example, the first is a couple It was Luke and Henry, I do believe. And Henry is a new purchase, for lack of a better word, to this plantation where Luke already is. And Luke is basically the sex slave of this very effeminate, pudgy, piggish, frankly homophobic rendition of a man. And then the whole thing just felt like, okay, here's these cartoonishly evil people who are absolutely decimated, and I feel nothing. Like, I don't even feel like, yeah, get them. It was just like, well, yeah, of course this was going to happen. This was inevitable. They're truly, deeply awful, but in a way that I feel nothing emotionally. And there was something that really didn't sit right with me. I picked up this book to fulfill a Goodreads credit, which was about LGBT month, because it's Pride Month. And so I was like, okay, cool, this is available at the library, let's pick this up. And the little blurb at the beginning, it said that all these were real slaves. All these were real enslaved people that did exist. And he wanted these two people, Henry and Luke, to have love that they didn't have in life. So he's giving it to them in their book. There's one kiss. There's a little bit of like playing house, so to speak. And then there's one love scene, which is very, very vanilla. It's very off-page. There is more screen time given to a castration by on one of these men, and the rape of one of these men, and the just violation of these men is given to the love between these two men. And that made me kind of uncomfortable. And it wasn't even... You don't need to shy away from the bad stuff. It's not so much that. It's more that the author made a specific point to say, I want them to have the love they didn't have in life. But you have paragraphs dedicated to a castration. It just sat weird with me, so 3 out of 5. Next up was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This was again to get a Goodread credit. I got a full 12 out of 12 for the first little chunk, which I was really proud of. I've never done that. This is about a woman who's fresh out of prison. She goes to be a housemaid and is hired on by some crazy lady who, jokes on all of us, she ends up not being that crazy. And her husband's the crazy one. Spoiler alert. It's also a movie with Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried. This was bad. This is my second Frida McFadden book, and I think I'm done after this one because these people don't act like people. You're telling me that this woman who's fresh out of prison has experienced a lot of sexual harassment in her life, including violence against other women in front of her, would just be this fine about some dude, would just write it off like, oopsie doopsie, clearly he's not a bad guy, he's too handsome. Come on. At one point, Nina, Amanda Seyfried's character, is a single mom who has literally no one. She has her neighbor, and they trade off watching each other's kids. That's it. And she, when told, like, hey, I want to go on a date with you. Oh, I can't. I have my daughter. Oh, let my mom watch her. I have support. I have a husband. I have friends. I have my parents in town. And there's no way in hell that I would let somebody that I don't know's mom watch my kid. Like, that was just... She writes women where they're, like, obnoxiously dumb. Where, of course, like, to get the plot going, ain't nobody doing that. 2 out of 5. Next up is The School for Good Mothers by, I assume it's Jessamine Chan. This follows a woman who is taken essentially into custody for a School for Good Mothers to try and get custody of her child back after abandoning her for a couple hours. She had a very bad day, as she kept putting it. This was dull. There were parts that were very, like, yay. But for the most part, it was just kind of like, okay, this is happening. Frida's kind of unpleasant, especially at the end. So that was cool. If anything, I was like, oh, okay. But up until then, it was just kind of like a lazy river of a book. This is just kind of happening to me. I'm just kind of bobbing around, going along. Oddly long-winded, oddly toothless for something this upsetting. There also kept being these little asides about climate change that went nowhere, where it's like, oh, I mentioned it. See? I mentioned it. It's like, okay, but what are you going to do with it? You're not doing anything with it. You're just mentioning that natural disasters are happening. For what? It just felt out of place, I guess is the word. There was one part that talks about her instructor saying she has the intelligence for parenting but not the temperament. And I'm just like, hey, now mind your business. Leave me alone. So that was a 3 out of 5. Up was Dark Places by, I assume it's Gillian Flynn. Might be Gillian, but by Gillian Flynn. This is a young woman who is the only surviving member of a family annihilation that took out her older sisters and her mother. Her brother was the one who did it. And now she has some reason to think that maybe he didn't do it. And she's kind of basically trying to prove he did. And this was nonsensical. This book was nonsensical. It was that particular type of grimy that she tends to gravitate towards, let's say, that she tends to specialize in. But the ending was stupid. The ending came out of nowhere, and there was so much bad luck on this young man that it just got to be ridiculous. I'm like, okay, could anything else happen to you? Really? There's also some word choices where I would be like, now what do you think that means? Like she described her breasts as being dog-eared. Now, what does that mean? What is a dog-eared breast? I'm scared to look. But it was just fine. No, it wasn't fine. It was bad. It was a bad book. There were parts that I enjoyed, very few, so it was a 2 out of 5. It should have been a 1 out of 5, honestly. It was The Monster of Eldenhaven by Jennifer Geisbrecht. There's a monster in Eldenhaven. It had some really interesting stuff. There's not much of a plot. It just kind of follows this dude who's the monster of Eldenhaven. And it's really short. I think it was only like 4 hours. And I had a good time. There's some fun body horror. There's some interesting lore. I wasn't expecting it to be a gay romance. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention to the blurb. It came up as an available horror book on Libby, so I just picked it up. Been in a mood lately. And I had a good time. It was funny. Surprisingly. The narration was fantastic, too. So 4 out of 5. I'm going to say something controversial yet brave, but I'm glad my mom died was kind of mid. It was just okay. The writing was not anything spectacular. It was really bland. And I don't know if maybe it's her narration of it, because she keeps a very flat affect for the most part. Even these very harrowing things, she's describing being date raped with the casualness that someone would describe like a bad meal. And that sat weird. But maybe that's how she copes. But the actual writing itself, if you're talking words on page, were just fine. Harrowing stories. So upsetting. Her mom and grandmother, for that matter, were clearly really bad people. And this is a brave thing to do, but that doesn't mean it's a good book. It was mid. So, 3 out of 5. And I had one DNF, which was Fox by Joyce Carol Oates. This follows, I think, a child molester. And I think he's found chopped up in the woods. It was a monster of a book. And I got 5% into it, and I didn't care. Didn't care not one little bit what happened to anyone. So I dropped it because I've got free will, so why not? So, DNF'd. Hi, Editing Carly here. I completely forgot a book. I forgot Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. It is about a woman who has the perfect life from the outside. Turns out her husband's a fucking psycho. And it was fine.
It was a pretty good time. There were times that the husband dipped into being cartoonishly evil, whereas for the most part he seemed realistically evil. It actually reminded me, or rather, the housemaid reminded me of it, but done poorly. This I really enjoyed. He got his comeuppance. I had a good time. Excuse all the buzzing, my husband's texting me. But it was a 4 out of 5.
So there are the 10 books that I listened to or read this month. I'm still working on some from earlier in the month. I'm still working on the Journey to Parenthood for same-sex couples one. I'm working on Animal Farm. I'm working on Red Rising. I think that's it. For the month, I had a 3.6 because I had a couple fives. I had a couple doozies. For the year, I'm at 3.38, which I think is pretty good for what I've read so far. I think I'm on 41 or 42 books for the year. A little low for what I'd like, but we're about halfway through. So I'm on track for finishing near what I did last year. So, like, comment, subscribe, come have fun with me, and bye!